Brian Cos. I'm Northern Michigan. I have been fly fishing for woo, close to 40 years. We moved up north 20 years ago, made Petoskey home. I'm from Grand Rapids originally. I got lucky growing up that my stepfather was a bass guy, and I got to fish father-son tournaments with him a lot. But my father and stepmother, my stepmom's from Grayling, so I used to get a lot of trips to Grayling fishing for trout. And I have a lot of cousins that are guides in the area, so that became my I looked up to all those guys and their longboats and what a lifestyle they had being on the river in the summertime. They're always tan. They knew where all the fish were. Catching brook trout and browns were awesome. I think as soon as I learned how to tie a fly, I started tying flies at age 9 so I could go catch trout as much as I possibly could. We would ride our bike out. This is back way before we had cell phones. We would pack up a backpack, hop on a bike, grab our rods, and go hit Sand Creek out by Grand Valley State and try to catch steelhead every spring. It was just that's what you did as kids before we were addicted to our social media devices.
Right. So went to Grand Valley, grew up in Grand Rapids, ended up in Petoskey, Boyne City area. How did you start out fly fishing or was that something that evolved?
It definitely evolved, and so as a career choice, it fell into my lap. I'm a restaurant guy. I've always been in the restaurant industry. I worked at the Penn Club through college at Grand Valley State and at GRC back then. Um, Met a lot of people in town and I fished quite a bit then, but and this is where a lot of people get caught off guard or on the side. They say that I bring this out too fast. I just got back from a meeting with my sponsee. I've been in AA for 20 years, sober for 21. I quit drinking because I was living on the streets in Grand Rapids and I replaced my addiction to alcohol with fly fishing. So quite literally, when I say that fly fishing saved my life, it's not a joke. I made fly fishing become my new addiction and I jumped into the river with both feet. And I found that when I got up north, I still bartended and waited tables, but I had all these beautiful rivers around me. So I wanted to share that with a lot of people that we have up here. I was a president for a Trout Unlimited group for a number of years, and I was volunteering doing the Salmon in the Classroom program with our local elementary school. And the DNR, Heather Hedinger, I volunteer with a lot doing creel surveys and stuff like that. She's You're doing more than just a couple trips a year because I would donate trips to other groups like Women's Resource Center or whatever. And she said, you should probably get your guide's license and become legit. So I did. And that was over a decade ago. When I did that, about the same time, a gentleman out of Traverse City had the website called True North Trout, and he emailed me and asked me if I would be interested in taking it over. And I said, I don't really have an interest in blogging or writing or doing anything of that nature, of which I've got to get back to doing. Every winter, I say I should write more. It gets hard. I write well when I'm motivated or impassioned by something. When something comes along like the Didymo or the chumming issue, it's easy to get write down on paper and put something on. But Jordan Lindbergh had True North Trout. I told him I didn't want to do it. I talked to my wife about it. She said it would be very good for you to do it. It would be good practice for you to learn how to write and put your thoughts on paper. So I did say yes. I did take it over. I grew it. It just also happened that at that time, books started to become a thing and then Instagram came along and a lot of other guides, they frowned down upon you've been through there. You've got to put your time in at the shop. You got to put your effort. I'm like, I did all that. And I just happened to be the guy who in Northern Michigan had all the right pieces in the right place at the right time. And it grew very fast. I also had my connections downstate. So I would also donate trips to different TU chapters and grow my clientele that way. I think every day we go on the river, we're always learning. There's never a day that I've got it all figured out. The day I do have it all figured out, put me in the ground because then it's no longer fun nor a challenge. And man, I look forward to every day that the river's different. The weather's different, the fish are different, the hatches are different. And obviously, I took bugs at Grand Valley State University. I took a refresher course at NCMC because I also volunteer for Tip of the Mitt Watershed Council doing stream surveys. I just love bugs. I love the fact that you can turn over a rock or a log and find 25 different macroorganisms living underneath a rock or a log all year long. It's just an amazing world that we live in a nutshell.
No, absolutely. I love your story, Brian. And I think there's a couple nonprofits now, or at least maybe one that does work with people that are in AA and helping them use fly fishing as a means of therapy and their journey to rehabilitate. And have you ever volunteered with a group like that before, or given trips away to people like that to help teach them?
We tried. I lived right across the street from Harbor Hall, which is a rehab community in Petoskey. And we thought about doing a fly tying night with guys that were in the program because it gives you, when you sit down and you're tying flies, your mind isn't thinking about your addiction. Your mind is thinking about the art and the craft that you're doing at hand. I quit smoking a number of years ago too. And whenever I wanted to have a cigarette, I would go tie a fly. So my mind would, it gave me that 5 minute reprieve of not craving something, just like drinking a glass of water. There are programs out there. I'm more involved with the Mayfly Project in Northern Michigan. And you guys are going to see at the Midwest Expo that there's going to be a whole bunch of reeling and healing, casting for recovery, Project Healing Waters. There's so many nonprofits out there. I wish I could be involved with them all and donate to the veterans that have done so much for our country. And it's just an amazing thing to be able to share our passion for the rivers with other people.
Yeah. Speaking of expo, we're excited to see you at the expo.
I can't wait. It's great that you guys are both going to be there. And I think it's a great addition to have you doing some live broadcasts.
Yeah, I think that it's gonna change things up and make it a little bit different, but that this is the dawn of the changing of the fly fishing industry, like you were just talking about previously. Having a lot
Veritable
of
shot in the arm.
yeah, yeah, making a lot of necessary changes this year. Me and Ash are, and this is step one of a million. So I think that it will be good for our listeners. And yeah, what better way to say what's going on and talk to those important people than putting it on a podcast?
Absolutely. Totally agree. And it gets people who aren't there a feeling of being there and having some kind of connection to it. Are you familiar with Jason Tuck?
And
He used to write a blog. He lived in Alanson. His blog was called Fontanellis Rising. And if
okay.
you look up his blog, he's a really great writer, great angler. Him and I have fished a number of times. I remember him writing about going to one of his first shows, and he wrote about how cool it was to make connections with a whole bunch of people.
It's a moment in time where, for instance, I read a lot of what Jerry Regan's put out there. To like actually see someone like Joe Jackson's flies in hand, like last year was like this moment of enlightenment where it's, oh, you can actually get into a space with these people and have an informal conversation.
Yes. And somebody like Jerry Regan, I'm relocating to the basement because my wife's coming home with groceries and I don't want her to be too loud.
Put them away.
Gosh. Yeah. Somebody like Jerry has so many years of experience that somebody needs to sit down with that guy and get all of his years of wisdom on paper. Whenever I run into him, it's always how you doing, Jerry? If I was any better, I'd be 6 feet under. He's got it's like the grandpa that we all have. And I think our generation is missing the storyteller part of the angling community. I was talking with Joe Humphreys a few years ago, and he said that most good presenters are all good storytellers. And there's very few and this next generation that can sit around a campfire and tell a story and have everybody engaged. It's knowing how to read the audience. It's having a good command of the English language. It's just knowing how to bait people in. And there's a few that still do it. I think George Daniel, who's going to be at the show, is one of them. Landon Mayer, another excellent example. There's a lot of younger guys that are coming up that are going to have to be paying attention to these people that came before us, the Lefty Crays, the Flip Pallets. You can sit down and listen to Flip Pallet forever because the guy is just enthralling with his wisdom and knowledge, and you're hanging by his every next word. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Those guys have paved the way for us in a lot of ways. They've come up with a lot of different things and reinvented the wheel in terms of fly fishing like tons of times. I
Yes.
don't I don't think nowadays the social media that we have really tells their story too well. It always the social media and stuff that we have now focuses a lot on the now, the people that are out there that are young and thriving, but they're still writing those stories. They're just a couple chapters in as opposed to these older greats that have a whole book or two to fill full of knowledge.
And I'm excited to when we finally can get people, and this is like something we haven't been able to do for a few years, is get people multi-generational together in a space like, for instance, Midwest Fly Fishing Expo. We have people that are 90 plus, and then maybe someone that's 16, 17, 18. And there's such a big difference in communication there. Like, we think of someone younger, it's 7 seconds on Instagram. If I can't grab your attention in 7 seconds, then I've failed my game.
You've
And
lost them. Yes.
and then we have someone like Jerry, and I'm so excited to maybe even get moments where we can get some multi-generational conversations going, because the gap is so much different, but the knowledge is there.
Yes.
Some of our younger anglers, and what I'm seeing, or I know a lot of older anglers will say, "Oh, a squirmy worm's a trash can fly." I hate to say that, but that trash can fly works, and there's a reason that we're taking new materials and trying different things. Just like our older generation that took all sorts of different hair, we have synthetics now. Why not play with those?
Exactly. Totally. I'm not a purist. I'll use a mob fly if I have to. Like, at the show this weekend, I was tying a whole bunch of Pat's rubber legs, turds, whatever you want to call it, because they catch fish.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. I
just
think
it's a modified mop fly.
matching something and the fish's food, whether people like to admit it or not. They can call it a dirty mop all they want, but at the end of the day, it's a fish is gonna eat it. Someone may or may not set the hook on it.
Yes. I think I saw in one of your questions, Ash, something about center pinning. And I think that when the time is right, steelheading with a center pin is one of the most effective, deadly ways to catch a lot of fish. At the end of the day, the client doesn't really hold on to what did I catch that fish on. They just have a memory that they had a great day catching a lot of fish. And then that makes them book another trip with you. I think center pinning between the fly world and the conventional world is the Pinot Noir between the white and the reds. So it's an easier transition, whether you're conventional or fly, to go from left to right or right to left. It helps people. It's not easy to do. There's a lot of finesse involved. There's a lot of learning how to control that reel without getting all your lines smacked up backwards in your face in a big old bird's nest. But it's super effective. And I've gone down the river with a lot of people, Wild Bill, and I'll throw a streamer all day long. And then he drops a spawn bag in the same spot where I just was and pulls out a steelhead just because the offering is right in front of the fish. And the fly, when I make my first strip, is pulled away from where the fish is supposed to be at. So it's effectiveness. Better to have the wrong fly at the right depth than the right fly at the wrong depth. Did I say that backwards?
It's like a tongue twister.
Yes. The right fly at the wrong depth is worse than having the wrong fly at the right depth.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you said that. Yeah, you said that perfectly. And yeah, while I've never gotten too deep into center pinning, I've done it a couple times before. I do see how effective it is. And I think that's why I avoid it at times because um I feel like I always like to give myself a challenge getting it on the fly rod as opposed to a lot of you guys up there. Your water systems are very different from Michigan than Ohio and Pennsylvania. The center pinners will be there catching fish, and then eventually I can make one happen. But I know that's not always the case in Michigan, especially with some of the deeper holes that you guys hold on your side.
The runs, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever been on the water before where you're fishing with center pinners and you were using a fly rod and the opposite happened where you were catching them and they weren't?
It does, but it's only 1 out of 10. It's the other way around. They're smacking them way more than I am, but I will say that I much rather get any steelhead on the swing when you're dropping a fly and they tug on the very end of that. There's no other jolt in your life, 15-pound steelhead on the end of a spey rod.
Yeah.
And there's no other kind of heartbreak than when you get them on the swing and just for a split second they spit the hook.
They or you pull the old trout set and every guide I go with, they're like, dude, you're not supposed to set the hook. Just let them do it. But you can't. It's so hard to resist, so hard to untrain. It's like mousing, but on big water during the day. It's just that's
Yeah.
why, like I said earlier, there's always all these levels of learning. There's never a day that you've got it all figured out.
Wow.
Right. Every day
Speaking of
is different.
speaking of flies and learning, I know that during the expo, there's all sorts of different classes going on, different knowledge that someone could attain. What, out of your perspective, what are some of the classes that if you're going to attend the expo, where, what do you need to be at?
Detroit's going to be one of the best shows for the Midwest in general because we've got the Great Lakes. Any given day of the summer, winter, fall, spring, I can chase a number of different species of fish, especially the month of June. We can go to St. Mary's River and go catch steelhead or Atlantics. We can also go brown trout fishing for drake with drakes, or we can go hit smallmouth in some of the inland bays, muskie fishing, carp fishing. We've got so much. There's a lot of different guides from different shops and different outfitters are going to be offering different classes on destination travel. Great Lakes are often referred to as the flyover states. When people go from New York to Montana or Colorado, they fly over the Great Lakes and they don't fish them. But I love fishing some of my waters up by Traverse City, at the freshwater Bahamas. I'll do that on my stand up paddleboard for smallmouth, large pike, carp, absolute challenge catching a carp on a fly. And when they take off, call them a mud bone, call them whatever you will. A 30-pound Great Lakes carp will put you in your backing faster than any other fish in freshwater. I swear there's nothing else quite like it.
Yeah, I like to call them
Wow,
a
that'll pour it. That'll tell you.
It's fun because you can just get to different spots and see a lot of fish and pick out the ones that you want to chase after. The other good thing about the expo, though, you would be if you don't know who Tightline Productions Tim Flageller is, you've got to stop and check him tying. He's got the softest voice, he's got the best presentation. All of his videos are entertaining. They're also, I think, from beginner to expert fly tying level, you can find a fly in his arsenal of YouTube. And his story is pretty unique too. I believe he got started back when his wife was selling candles and he was doing photography for his wife in a catalog shoot. And then he started thinking, hey, I can do this for fly tying. And that began the series. And obviously he's super famous with Orbis, and Mr. Rosenbauer helped him get along with that. But Tim's a great guy. Everybody should go check out a couple of his presentations. He's got a lot of really small, neat tricks to make your tying more enjoyable and relaxing. I'm not a production tyer. When I sit down and tie, I tie because they're flies that I need and because they're flies that I don't want to buy. And if it's streamer fishing, I see a new material and I'm like, oh, let's try this. Oh, let's try this. So I get 4 or 5 done, and then I'm switching out to a different variation of the circus peanut or the whatever we're tying at the time, the nappy sculpin or the freeze dried sculpin, whatever. Big bait fish are fun to tie.
Yeah, you're kind of barking up Ash's tree right there. She loves fishing streamers. I always tell her there's a time and place for it. Fish streamer fishing, and Ash seems to think it's all the time.
It's 12 months of the year is streamer season.
Yeah.
Somebody says they don't streamer fish and they only dry fly fish. That means they're only fishing 2 months out of the year. If you're streamer fishing, there's always a streamer hatch.
That's right. Yeah, that's Ash's motto for sure.
In Michigan, especially with all of our woodwork, I've just that's what I've ended up developing as a very strong skill set because to get in, a lot of times it's that roll caps initial bend and you start stripping and there's somebody sitting underneath a log. And I've gotten so used to doing that. Like when I went to visit Krista, she was like, hey, let's use these nymphs. I'm like, what are those things? I'm like, wait, they're wood. How do you float it in? So
Yeah.
We have a lot of guys that make a lot of fun of the nymphing guys, but I will say that nymphing, Euro nymphing, tight lining, super effective, super deadly, but we are very limited in the number of miles of river in Michigan that you can effectively nymph fish. But the spots that you can on certain rivers that I fish, I will do that and bring along a 9 or 10 foot 3 weight, 4 weight, and you'll pull fish out. And they'll still be decent 14 to 18-inch fish, which are surprising in that water, but they're in there and they're feeding. And a lot of times you go right over past them. George Danielle, who will be at the show, is one of those excellent dynamic nympher guys. He sent one of his clients who booked a couple trips with him to learn how to nymph. And then he came up to go to Michigan to learn how to streamer fish. So he spent some time with me a few years ago. And I'll never forget watching him work a run that I float by numerous times. And now I always stop and we always pull 2 or 3 fish out with a Pat's rubber legs with a blowtorch or a Perdigon or the Duracell jig, whatever. A couple of crazy favorite flies, the Rainbow Warrior, Copper John, whatever, name it. They're eating them because they're just the right size that matches everything else that's in the river.
yeah, especially see that a lot on the boardman. Like you can go out on the boardman, and dry fly your heart out, nothing will eat, and you switch over to an nymph and it works.
The Boardman is like a reborn new Western river in northern Michigan. And it's not a secret, but there's a lot of people that would like to keep it that way. It's bar, it's a hidden gem. It's obviously next to Traverse City, so there's a lot of people that go hit it because it's in their backyard. But there's a lot of rivers up here that do have a lot of space like that. You just have to know where they're at. Pull out your Onyx or Google Maps and try to find them. But we're blessed with so many millions of miles, not millions, but thousands of miles of fishable water that you can escape a lot of people.
So talking about time flies, different types of flies, this makes me think about shopping. And I liken it to the song of like when you go to Willy Wonka and there's all the candy. It's what the showroom floor is from my experience last year. We had Schultzes, we had the giant Hackle Lollapalooza thing at the other end. Like there's all this stuff going on. So what in your perspective as someone who ties, I sit around and paint more than anything, so I don't tie a lot of my own flies. What's in it for the tire?
You're going to be able to see a lot of the newest, latest materials, and you're going to be able to talk to a lot of different fly shops and what they've been tying because every region in the state has a different regionality as far as what they're tying. You talk to the grayling guys, whether it's Gates, Old DeSable, Ron's Fly Shop, they're going to be heavier into the drakes and the hex bugs. Where you talk to somebody at Schultz and they're not tying too many drakes or hex because they're more in the streamer game. They're more in the smallmouth, pike, destination travel. Maybe they're doing some carp fishing or they're heading over to the Menominee and doing some smallmouth fishing. So everybody's got their own niche. And I think that perspective from each shop is a good thing to talk to. And you also mentioned the wall of hackles. I believe that would have been Keo. Keo is a Michigan hackle company, and you can find some really good saddles and capes for a really good price because a lot of these guys show up. A lot of shops bring their entire store with them and they don't want to pack it all back up on Sunday to bring it back home. You're going to find closeouts. You're going to find deals on last year's materials that a lot of people want to move out. I also think that it's a great opportunity just to talk to, like you said, a lot of different guides, a lot of different tires. Somebody sit down and tie and bang out a whole bunch of the same patterns, you will see how they make it more effective, more simple, and more fun at the same time.
Yeah. I remember I got pulled over to the tying area. So that whole back wall near the bleachers, I don't know how many hours I spent over there because I go back to my corner of the earth and someone, oh, here, no, come back over here. And within the 10, 15 minutes of sitting there and like exchanging stories with them, there's a whole pile of flies. And they're like, which one do you want? What color you want? It's like, wait, aren't you selling these things? Or like, oh, here, take that.
And it's cool because I've got some flies from some people that are no longer from 10 years ago. I've got a couple flies and I've got them on a little board that they're just never going to be touched again because that's their craft and that's their art. We got people like Mike Schmidt and some of those guys that are from Michigan, Ohio, and now he's down in Florida, and that's all he does is bang out streamers for shops all across the country.
There's certainly various, I would say there's various types of artwork to be had because we've got paintings, we've got wearable artwork, which is all the sorts of cool clothing and stuff that you'll see from some of the vendors. And then we also have artwork that's like Joe Jackson
Yeah.
and his flies, which that man does magic with deer hair.
Yeah, he does. Yep. It used to be Chris Helms years ago with his mouse flies, and it's just it seems to get passed on to the next generation, the next generation.
So
And
speaking of generation, from your perspective this year, the tradition, last year was my first year going to this thing. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of tradition around this expo. So what's tradition and what's new?
there is, and I think I'm lucky that I'm in the middle of it because I see my parents' generation, my grandfather's generation that might not be around as much, and you guys are the next ones coming around. I think it's very cool to watch some of these younger anglers, younger tires, younger guides coming up with combinations on patterns that we've been using for a number of years, and they're putting new twists on them. I'll still pull out an old black ghost every once in a while or an old coachman, and they catch fish. But it's also cool to see somebody who sees a new material come along and they're like, hey, let's try to apply this to this principle. And they do it and it works. And there's the dubbing brush phenomenon with all of our streamers that we tie that knocks out some pretty bulky patterns that don't have a lot of weight that I can pick up with a 6 or a 7 weight and cast them a long distance and get a good profile on a bait fish that a lot of other fish tend to like. I'm liking to see all the different colors that we have coming up and all the different blends and crystal flashes and stuff that we have. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Well, for the younger generation coming into the fly fishing industry, I'm seeing a lot of these younger tires. And there's always people that are getting into being a guide and working at a shop and things like that. But I feel like they're really enjoying picking up the fly fishing or the fly tying part of things because they can be unique and creative with their craft. And some of these kids have just made flies that we haven't thought to do before. Not only just artificial materials that we have now, but the different bead heads, with the tungsten, different sizes, different colors. And then they put it out, and those things are working way too damn well sometimes. I really think that's been a big impact is the fly tying part, simply because people get to be creative. And when they do develop a fly that works really well, they have their name behind it. They want to be recognized for that. And that's how they get that right away, you know?
Absolutely. I think the articulations, the shanks, the blank chocolates, the game changers, the now he's doing the mini changers, it's good to have the basics, the principles of tying, but at the same time, all rules apply. And on the other side, no rules apply. You know, that you don't have to, you can follow whatever you want. And y- the bottom line is the fish is the one who's going to determine whether your fly is effective or not. And when you get it in the water, whether it swims nice or doesn't swim nice, or if it's a pain in the butt to pick up and you can't do it with an 8 weight or a 9 weight and your arms are going to be sore, then you might want to go back to the drawing board and try to scale down. Charlie Craven and some of those guys that tie some flies that are absolutely the swim coach and the baby swim coach, super small profile. You can almost throw that thing on a 5 weight and it has a great presence in the water and looks a lot like, look at some of the guide flies that I fished with Drew Rosema for Steelhead last year and Matt Zudwig, the guys with Feenstra Guide Service. Their flies aren't very elaborate or multi-layered, just a little bit of marabou and a little bit of flash. That's it. Boom, and you're done. And they're guide flies. They're effective. They can bang out 30 of them in a minute or whatever, 30 seconds, and they catch fish all day long. Sometimes we overthink the whole process. Let's bring it back down, boys. It's just fishing, right?
It's like this reminds me of a so when I was in college and I was taking art classes, my professor, he would always like when someone would get a little like too in the weeds of what they were doing, he'd look at you and he'd be like, "What are you doing?" And we're like, "I'm doing that service." And he'd look at you and go, "Don't make rules. Make art." It's that same sort of almost like with fly fishing. Don't
Exactly.
make yourself the rules. Like
Same
learn more
principles.
and start with.
Yes, totally agree.
So from what I understand, we're going around, we're getting a bunch of different people together, kind of what we're going to be doing at the expo is completely new. So people aren't aware, like even our vendors, we're starting to share information. Hey, we're going to be doing this live. And I know just talking with you before we started, Brian, we were talking about what could we possibly be doing that's different or how can we entice people to come over. So you were mentioning a few different items with well, we're also talking some trips. There's lots of giveaways that happen at this event.
There are, and we don't want to take away from the actual event itself. We just want to add to it at the same time. But to get, I think, to motivate the excitement, to get people to come out, that's what the whole draw is. It's a it's like a big family. It's our dysfunctional family that we all get together. We can't wait to catch up and see each other. It was very much missed during the COVID years. And we also get to, for you guys, a lot of people get to see new products that where else can you walk into a building and test cast 5 or 6 different fly rods from different manufacturers and see which one you like, or see what new fly lines from Scientific Anglers or Rio or from Orbis, what's out there, what's going to work for your fishing situation. Or maybe you're going to go on a destination travel this year. Maybe you're going to the Bahamas. Maybe you're going to Canada. Maybe you're going to Alaska. You get to talk to a lot of different people that have done all these things and you can get firsthand experience and knowledge that sure you could get if you emailed somebody or gave somebody a call, but it's a lot better when you're doing it in person.
Definitely. I,
Yeah, fly shops definitely aren't going to let you test out all those rods and all those fly lines. So the expo is like a perfect place to go and do that and get the firsthand representation from those companies.
Yes. And actually some, in some cases, learn how to cast better or hear, you get to hear stories from some people that have been in these places and they got better doing things because they learned how to do it better by attending these events.
definitely. Oh, I think I'm looking at our sheet here. I think we covered everything. Is there anything from like the fly fishing show expo position, Brian? Is there anything that you think we need to add to entice people to come in or
Definitely visit the website, Michigan Fly Fishing Club, and see what they have for new vendors that are going to be there. I know that Catch Flow will be there. They've got the fishing based themed shoes. Dave Humphreys is usually there and he's doing fly boxes that he can engrave on the box your name. There's a lot of different tires there that will be selling a whole bunch of flies. Bo from Little Forks Outfitters will be there. Schulte will be there. Gates, Old Asable. I don't know about Asable River Outfitters.
We we have some younger names showing up too. I know the gentleman from Hex Fly, so the net, they're super kind, really nice gentlemen. I went fishing with them a few times and
Very cool nuts too. Yep.
yeah,
I'm sure that Stealthcraft and those guys will be there with some boats. If anybody's in the market to shop for a new boat or a inflatable, it's just a great place and a great resource to ask a lot of questions and see a lot of different people that have the resources and the answers to a lot of things you're looking for.
I have a couple people that I know that have a net company called Catch Cam Nets. Have you heard about them?
Yes.
I think that they're going to be there. Yeah, totally reinvented the wheel with the fishing nets for sure. And I know those guys, super nice guys, super knowledgeable, and they're operating out of West Virginia. So they're coming all the way up there to be at
Nice.
the show and be part of it. Yeah. So I love seeing people come from all over just to be at this one fly show because you know how important it is to get people from all over.
Absolutely. And there will also be a lot of the nonprofits there, Michigan Trout Unlimited, a couple of the TU local chapters, the ladies from Reeling and Healing will be there. So there's a lot of good groups to get connected if you're looking to volunteer or if you're looking to give back. Pretty sure the Mayfly Project will have a table there as well. So it's good for all the resources that we have in the state of Michigan and surrounding Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana.
yeah. I'm excited. It's for me, and like even you cause it's almost like you said, it's like the family reunion. Everyone that I met last year that became friends that I turned into mentors. It's like the one time of the year that we're not all on the water somewhere chasing each other down for a phone call.
Exactly, totally, and it used to be a week earlier, about 5 years ago, so there were more shops that were there. Now that it's a little bit later into March, we're pushing steelhead season, so you don't see as many of the PM guides there. I know that VT used to be there and a few other shops used to be there, but there'll be plenty of outfitters and guides there to book trips for the rest of the year and other destinations.
I've got PM covered now.
Yes, you do. That's very true. Good job.
Yeah. So we at least have one PM person.
Yes. I wonder if 1884 will be there. I think Dan White might show. I don't know.
I have a floor plan because I got first pick. So I went and Craig and I were going over everything. I'm like, I want to have a tent. He's like, are you insane? I'm like, no, here's the
No.
deal.
Yep.
We're changing the whole game. We're gonna have the cool kids corner over there. So we're gonna have the tent and it's gonna be a lot of fun.
We're on the fence. So we'll see. That's hopefully something like this will help people push them over the edge.
Yeah, we've got a few rapid fire questions for you and then we'll set you free. If you had a theme song, like wrestler style, you're gonna show up to the water. What's the cause like theme?
Oh, that's tough. But my my music preference would be the 80s alternative, Depeche Mode, New Order, Erasure, that kind of stuff. But lately on my walks and my exercise routine, I've been listening a lot to Cascade and Dead Mouse. So probably Dead Mouse, the Brazil extended mix is pretty cool. I'll have to throw that in there.
Nice.
It gets you moving. It gets you doing stuff.
Yeah. You got some hype beat going,
Yes.
blood pumping. So if you could only fish one type of fly moving forward, you could only pick one.
It's going to have to be a streamer. Yes.
Yeah.
It will have to be of the Kelly Gallup family flies. Yes.
Looking like a true Michigander.
Just a Northern Michigan thing. Yep.
I will take Ash down to where I live and tell her, okay, so really, like, you're going to have a hard time with anything else unless you use a couple of these nymphs. And she's like, I don't give a damn. And she'll just whip out the streamer and she'll be whipping that around and
I feel
yeah.
her pain and I know why we go home frustrated sometimes, but we also know why we catch big fish too.
Yeah, it's a game.
It happens.
So,
I'll
uh,
give her that. She does catch some nice fish on the streamers.
what are your goals for spring season?
Oh, we are I'm ready. We're ready to go. Because this winter was pretty mild, we got to get out a lot more in December than we normally do because once you're this far north, the rivers freeze up and the access to getting in or getting out becomes limited, but we got out a few times. I've been tying flies. I've got a few bins full and they're smaller flies than streamer flies, but I my goal this year and all of 2023 is to fish new water more for myself and not book up as much so I can spend more time with some friends.
Cool, cool. So as a reminder for everyone, Brian joined us because all three of us will be at the Midwest Fly Fishing Expo on March 11th and 12th. That's at the Macomb, is it Macomb Community College? Uh,
Yes,
outside in Detroit area. We're hoping that you can attend. Brian, in the short, what's in it for them?
you're going to be able to come down and see all of us hang out at a tent talking about fishing and the fun things that we do with a fly rod. You'll be able to come down and test cast a couple of fly rods. I'm with the TFO booth, so I will be down there with a whole bunch of guys and we'll be talking about the latest, newest, best stuff in the market. And you'll be able to visit a lot of other manufacturers like Scientific Anglers, Reddington, Sage, Rio, all the other guys that are out there and check in on new products that different dealers have.
Awesome. So once again, that's Midwest Fly Fishing Expo. That'll be March 11th and 12th. Macomb Community College. Doors open at, what is it, 10 or 11?
I think it's 9 o'clock on Saturday and 10
Okay.
o'clock on Sunday.
Okay. So
Yes, two
get
days.
there early. Get there early. There's a line. So if you do plan on attending, purchase your ticket in advance on the Michigan Fly Fishing Club or Midwest Fly Fishing Expo website. Purchasing it in advance gets you out of that line. Also, great time. So thanks, Brian, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Look forward to seeing you guys down there.
Yeah, looking